On this Friday night, Trump's tariffs terminated. The U.S. Supreme Court strikes down the president's core economic policy, how Trump is lashing out.
So I'm allowed to destroy the country, but I can't charge him a little fee.
His plans for new tariffs and why the ruling may not mean relief for Canada.
It's not the end of the war.
British investigators dig deeper into former Prince Andrew's past over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein as the royal family faces growing backlash.
I think they've been protected all their lives, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is only the beginning.
Plus, another nail-biter for Canadian hockey fans. The do-or-die semi-final against Finland brings the men's team one win away from Olympic gold.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The U.S. Supreme Court delivered its highly anticipated ruling on Donald Trump's tariffs. America's highest court found the president overstepped his authority when he invoked emergency powers to impose those levies last spring. Now, this ruling is not expected to affect most Canadian exports, which are handled separately, and we'll have more on the Canadian consequences in just a moment. But we begin in Washington, where a seething President Trump fired back, announcing plans for new tariffs. Jackson Proskow has our top story tonight.
It's incorrect. Their decision's incorrect.
Stinging from his devastating loss at the Supreme Court, President Donald Trump lashed out over the defeat of his sprawling tariffs.
It's my opinion that the court has been swayed by foreign interests.
In a 6-3 ruling, the justices declared Trump's global tariffs are illegal and struck them down immediately. They found Trump exceeded his authority when he bypassed Congress and used an emergency powers law to impose the duties. Chief Justice John Roberts noted no president has invoked the statute to impose any tariffs, let alone tariffs of this magnitude and scope.
I can do anything I want to do to them, but I can't charge any money. So I'm allowed to destroy the country, but I can't charge them a little fee.
This is going to turn some things on its head, and I'm sure it's going to be quite disruptive to the administration at this point.
Immediately after the ruling, Trump vowed to impose an additional 10% global tariff under a different law. Those new tariffs can only remain in effect for 150 days without approval from Congress.
But other alternatives will now be used to replace the ones that the court incorrectly rejected.
The court didn't answer the question of what happens to the estimated $175 billion in tariffs already collected. American businesses and consumers largely paid those costs. Trump suggested he'd fight refunds in court.
And the question then becomes, how do you seek recouping of those tariffs? It's not completely clear, watertight in all circumstances, how you're going to be repaid.
In many ways, Trump was his own worst enemy in this case. While he claimed the tariffs were about economic protection, he often used them as a weapon against countries like Canada simply because they had angered him. That undermined his claims of a national emergency to the point that 2 of the conservative justices he appointed ultimately ruled against him in this case. Jeff?
Jackson Proskow in Washington. Thanks, Jackson. That Supreme Court ruling has provoked mixed reaction on this side of the border. The minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade said the decision reinforces Canada's position that the IEEPA tariffs imposed by the United States are unjustified. Dominic LeBlanc went on to say that critical work lies ahead to support Canadian businesses and workers who remain affected by sectoral tariffs, including Canada's steel, aluminum, and auto sectors. The vast majority of Canadian exports to the U.S. are protected from tariffs by our existing free trade agreement. But as Touria Izri reports, the path forward is clouded in uncertainty.
The ruling is a victory against U.S. President Donald Trump, but far from a clear-cut win for Canada.
What we said from the very beginning is these tariffs are unjust, and that position has not changed.
The same day those tariffs were struck down, Trump threatened new ones.
We always take note of what the president says. What I can tell you at this point of time is that we'll continue our engagement with our American friends.
All part of the growing uncertainty about how the Trump administration will react to the legal defeat.
This really guarantees more uncertainty and likely more tariffs down the road, both globally speaking, but possibly for Canada as well. It's certainly not the end of this never-ending tariff story. It's just a new chapter.
Trump unveiled the international economic emergency tariffs last year on what he dubbed Liberation Day. But Canada was spared the bulk of the pain, with goods under the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement, or CUSMA, exempt.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Liberation Day.
British Columbia Premier David Eby welcomed the U.S. Supreme Court decision, but with a caveat.
It doesn't address the challenges in our softwood sector. It certainly does potentially address some of the serious concerns we have.
The ruling does not affect the most punishing tariffs on Canada, which are damaging the softwood lumber, steel, aluminum, and auto sectors.
Well, clearly the administration has Canada in its sights. The administration has shown no sign, no willingness that they want to ease off those tariffs. So anyone working in those sectors will continue to be very worried.
The biggest test for Canada likely won't be in a courtroom, but at the negotiating table during the upcoming review of CUSMA. Jeff?
Touria Izri in Montreal. Thanks, Touria. Besides condemning the Supreme Court, the U.S. president separately announced plans to release secret government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life. Trump says he's ordering the Pentagon chief, among other agencies, to release information based on tremendous interest, calling it extremely important. Trump's social media post Thursday night follows recent comments from former President Barack Obama. In a podcast interview last weekend, Obama caused a frenzy after saying aliens were real. Obama later clarified that he meant the odds are good that life is out there. Trump is now accusing Obama of disclosing classified information. The company behind ChatGPT says its employees raised alarms about the Tumbler Ridge shooter 7 months before the attack. Jesse Van Rootselaar shot and killed 8 people last week, including students and an educator at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. In a statement, OpenAI told Global News that an account associated with Van Rootselaar was banned from the platform back in June for violating its usage policy. The company said it considered referring the account to police, but determined the activity did not constitute an imminent or credible risk to safety. British police are still searching the former home of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor after he was released under investigation Thursday night. The former prince was held and questioned for 11 hours following his arrest on suspicion of sharing confidential government information with Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew has previously denied all wrongdoing, but the British government is now reportedly considering special legislation to remove him from the order of succession. Mountbatten-Windsor is currently 8th in line to the throne. Vincent McAviney reports from London.
A royal portrait unlike any other. Splashed across papers around the world, a stunned-looking Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor slumped in the back seat as his protection unit drives him away from a police station. For the Reuters photographer who captured the already iconic image, it was a surreal moment.
Is it the best photo I've ever taken? No. Is it up there with one of the most important? 100%.
Thames Valley Police are expecting their search of Royal Lodge, Andrew's former home in Windsor, will continue through to Monday. Meanwhile, London's Metropolitan Police have announced they're contacting former and serving close protection officers as part of investigations into Andrew's conduct and relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. It's believed some may have accompanied the former prince to Epstein's private island. The arrest is dominating the national conversation in Britain, with an unprecedented debate on the future of the monarchy.
They've been protected all their lives, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is only the beginning.
It doesn't reflect well on the family as a whole, but I think they'll survive.
A former advisor to King Charles believes whatever happens next with Andrew, the rest of the family will keep calm and carry on.
The institution obviously will not be delighted to see the images that have been broadcast around the world. However, the advantage that they have is they have a role to play in public life. And as they keep moving forward, as they keep doing their jobs, so the hope is that the eyes of the world will turn back towards the work that they are there to do.
With multiple police forces conducting inquiries, there's a sense here that this could be a long investigation. The royal family will be hoping they can isolate and contain any potential damage. But like the rest of us, they're left wondering what police might find next in Andrew's possessions and on his devices. Jeff?
Vincent McAviney in London. Thanks, Vinny. Following the arrest of the former prince, some Canadian municipalities are now taking steps to remove his name from local landmarks. The mayor of St. Catharines in Ontario's Niagara region says he wants to see Prince Andrew Court renamed. He says council has a responsibility to ensure place names reflect community values. Toronto also has a street named Prince Andrew Place. The mayor there says she's reviewing options with staff and council. Several municipalities have already renamed landmarks once dedicated to the former royal, including Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and Mississauga, Ontario. Team Canada added 2 more bronze medals to its tally today in women's speed skating and the men's free ski halfpipe. The men's hockey team also secured their spot in Sunday's gold medal match against the U.S. after a dramatic comeback in today's semifinal against Finland. Our Mike Armstrong is in Milan, and Mike, you could feel the whole country breathing a collective sigh of relief after that one today.
Well, Jeff, if anyone thought Canada was going to have an easy time in this tournament, they were dead wrong. It was once again tense. With Sidney Crosby injured, Team Canada took to the ice with a new captain, Connor McDavid, wearing the C. Now, it was another slow start for Canada. They gave up a goal in the first and another in the second, then started to climb their way back. Sam Reinhart pulled Canada within 1 in the second period. Shea Theodore tied the game up halfway through the third, and then with just 36 seconds left, Nathan McKinnon. Now, that last goal was reviewed to see if it was offside. It stood, much to the excitement of Canadians here in Milan.
I think anytime you're down a goal with, 7 minutes left, you're going to get nervous.
There's nothing like watching a Canadian Winter Olympics and the men's ice hockey progress to the gold medal game. It is like 1 in a million. I'm feeling very Olympic today.
I feel amazing. The atmosphere is great. Go Canada!
Now, in other sports, it was yet another medal for Valérie Maltais, this time bronze in the women's 1,500 meters. The 35-year-old from Saguenay, Quebec, now has 5 medals with 1 event to go and is very likely in consideration to carry Canada's flag in the closing ceremony. Now, Canada also won a bronze medal in the halfpipe. Freestyler Brendan McKay's first 2 runs had him in 10th place. His last run put him on the podium. Now, there will be more medals for Canada this weekend. The men's curling team goes in the gold medal match Sunday. Reese Howden is a strong contender in snowcross Saturday. And Isabelle Blondin goes in her specialty, mass start on the long track. And of course, Canada's men's hockey team goes in the gold medal match. A lot of Canadians will be getting up very early Sunday morning. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Milan.
Alberta's immigration referendum coming up. Danielle Smith's plan to seek greater provincial powers to curb supports for newcomers as her government faces criticism over a ballooning deficit. And a little later, remembering Eric Dane, how the Grey's Anatomy star shone a spotlight on a deadly neurological disease. Alberta's premier is defending her decision to hold a referendum this October. Danielle Smith announced late yesterday she plans to hold a provincial vote on a range of issues, including immigration and access to social supports. The premier is facing questions about how her plan will help Alberta's bottom line. Jillian Piper reports.
The time has come to act on these issues. Danielle Smith is asking for Albertans' input on key issues this fall, including boosting provincial powers to curb immigration and blocking social services for temporary residents.
If you're only coming here on a 1-year work permit, why are you bringing your family and expecting taxpayers to pay for that?
Ottawa has already slashed the number of temporary residents allowed into Canada this year by about 43% from 2025 levels, but Smith says she wants further restraint, a complete turnaround from her previous position.
The fact that so many people have come to our province, I look at that as a positive, and we want to keep that going. That's why I've said, let's have an aggressive target to double our population.
The referendum proposals come as the province is expected to unveil a budget with a major deficit next week, but Smith said she does not know how much money the new measures would save, causing some to say there may be other motives.
To say that the current problems are primarily caused by outsiders, whether it be the federal government, other parts of Canada, or immigrants from outside of Canada, is a deflection of responsibility.
The BC Premier, who has been at odds with Smith for months over a proposed new pipeline in his province, railed against the referendum.
A referendum on an array of measures that will raise uncertainty around access to workers related to immigration, being able to recruit people from around the world, around the certainty and stability of the government, to be blunt.
Stability has been questioned as Alberta's separatism movement grows.
These are the kind of things that will give Albertans hope that the Federation can work. This is why we put them on the table.
Even if Albertans vote in favor of the proposals this October, federal approval is still necessary to make immigration reforms a reality, Jeff. The federal government says it has taken note of the Premier's remarks and that Canadians are best served when both jurisdictions work together.
Jillian Piper in Ottawa. Thanks, Jillian. The federal government has just updated its travel advice for First Nations people crossing the U.S. border. It now strongly recommends they carry a passport. The government website had previously said First Nations people could freely enter the United States with a valid status card. The new guidelines come in response to the U.S. immigration crackdown. Population boom and bust. Still ahead, why the federal government's immigration reduction is upending Atlantic Canada. The immigration boom appears to be over in Atlantic Canada. The population there is declining for the first time since recording unprecedented growth during the pandemic. The downward trend is expected to continue, with the federal government cutting immigration targets. Heidi Petracek reports on what it could mean for provinces stuck in the red.
It wasn't long ago the East Coast's growing population was celebrated as a reversal of a decades-long slide. Nova Scotia reached 1 million people in December 2021, which the Premier hailed as a milestone. But now,
what we see is a slowdown to a slow decrease in Atlantic provinces, which is something that we also see happening for Canada as a whole.
From 2021 to 2024, the East Coast saw more people move in from other parts of the country than out. According to Statistics Canada, those gains are gone, combined with Ottawa's reduction of non-permanent residents.
You could probably talk to some universities in the Atlantic provinces that are definitely feeling that.
The agency's most recent figures show exactly how many people each province lost in the last quarter of 2025. Newfoundland and Labrador, 173. Prince Edward Island, 149. Provinces with higher populations had more to lose. New Brunswick's dropped by more than 1,000 people, while Nova Scotia saw a loss of almost 1,400. The effects of that prior population surge on housing and healthcare have been costly. Provincial governments now struggling under debt and tightening purse strings.
Our infrastructure won't take anymore, and that's the big problem.
Slower immigration could ease some pressures in the short term, but it's definitely not a long-term solution. And there's a little bit of a catch-22 going on too, where construction and healthcare do have some labor shortages that they're facing.
Which is why one maritime economist stresses Canada's new immigration strategy is meant as a temporary slowdown.
Even though some of these liabilities are borne by the federal government, many of them, like healthcare, are paid for significantly by the province. And that means provinces have an interest in keeping up the population of young workers.
Governments honing in on recruiting skilled workers now that the East Coast growth spurt is over. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Manitoba Dr. Josh Reimer has been named Canada's new Chief Public Health Officer. She replaces Dr. Theresa Tam, who retired in June. Reimer was the former top doctor for the Winnipeg Health Authority. She starts her new role April 1st. Actor turned advocate. Up next, remembering Eric Dane and his efforts to raise awareness around ALS. Welcome back. Actor Eric Dane has died after a short battle with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. Dane garnered a legion of fans playing McSteamy on the hit TV show Grey's Anatomy. Just 53 years old, Dane went public with his diagnosis last April. And as Eric Sorensen reports, he used the time he had left to advocate for more funding and research into the devastating disease.
So, do you ever go out with coworkers?
He signed for one episode of Grey's Anatomy, but Eric Dane was an instant heartthrob, and so McSteamy was born.
Oh. This is awkward.
As Dr. Mark Sloan, he was a mainstay on Grey's for 6 seasons. He landed many roles, as a Navy captain on The Last Ship, and more recently on Euphoria.
I'm not allowed to form an emotional connection.
He said he was lucky.
All they saw was me high-fiving my daughter.
But then, bad luck. Just months after this appearance, Dane was diagnosed with ALS, a devastating neurological disorder. He wasted no time, he didn't have much time, to raise awareness.
I'm Eric, an actor, a father, and now a person living with ALS.
ALS is an awful disease, and I think that the case of Eric Dane has highlighted just how aggressive this disease is, how nasty it is, affects fairly young people.
It became widely known as Lou Gehrig's disease, for the Yankees baseball legend struck down in his prime. In 2014, the Ice Bucket Challenge took off on social media, from the future mayor of Toronto to Sidney Crosby. The challenge raised about $17 million in Canada alone for ALS research. That kind of fundraising makes a difference, says Dr. Robertson.
We're getting there. We ourselves also have breakthroughs into potential therapeutics for ALS, and we just need to keep going, keep working at it, and we'll get there in the end.
And so Eric Dane kept working at it. When things got hard, he told Diane Sawyer in his first interview after his diagnosis, he would reach out to his wife.
I call Rebecca. I talk to her every day.
The majority of those with ALS live less than 5 years. But educating others was something Dane felt as an actor he could do. In his final TV role last fall on the show Brilliant Minds, he played a firefighter with ALS.
Nobody survives this.
But Eric Dane has raised awareness to help others survive. He was 53.
That is Global National for this Friday. I'm Jeff Semple. For Muslims here in Canada and around the world, this week marked the start of Ramadan, the holiest month in the Islamic calendar, and a time of prayer and reflection. We'll leave you tonight with scenes from Mecca and right across the globe, including Turkey, Nepal, and Gaza, where the world's roughly 2 billion Muslims took part in the first Friday prayers of Ramadan. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Have a great night.